Hello everybody, Loremaster Sotek here, back with a long-awaited and new episode of Who Would Win? And this time, I am joined by a new special guest. We've got the one, the only, the greatest
It's
YouTuber.
Professor Pope!
I forgot to hook up the fireworks. I'll tell Eric to put in crazy effects.
It was way more.
When you announce yourself.
It was way more epic in my head.
Just have him throw some John Cena stuff across the screen. So,
But he's got to have the Grievous face over John Cena.
I'm sure he can manage it. Without too much further ado, for anyone that's new to this series, basically we're just going to go over some matchups that have been proposed by all of you guys over on the YouTube, the last Who Would Win video, or in the Discord community. But before we get going, of course, like he introduced himself, we've got Professor Pone here with us, who is an awesome variety streamer. I always watch when he's streaming because I would say he's probably the most hilarious,
entertaining person on the internet. I agree.
Yeah, on the entire internet.
Uh-huh.
He's also like one of the biggest YouTubers. He just is too humble to admit it.
Uh-huh.
So if you like watching like random crap like Blood Bowl or Dead by Daylight, or what else do you play over there these days?
Yeah. Well, when Total War 3 comes out, I'll be on that. I played golf with friends before. That is incredibly fun.
I haven't
Like
heard of
you
that.
turn so it's like a putt golf game, but you like you like all go at the same time, and then you turn on a mode where there's ball collision, so that way you're all trying to do it, yeah. And then like there's always like one guy who's a jerk, and he's just only aiming to like smash your ball as hard as he possibly can.
Of course. All right. Well, we'll talk more about that at the end, but for now, we've got to get into our first matchup. So, for those of you who are watching, hopefully you caught the video that will come out before this one that'll announce the matchups. That way you can predict your winners and see if you can guess who I'm going to pick. Guessing who Pone's going to pick is going to be genuinely difficult. I'll be amazed if anyone gets like a perfect score on that.
Well, see, the thing is that like these are all from lore perspectives, and I know everything. So
that's true.
You're gonna describe
Warhammer.
You're gonna say who would win, but really, whoever I say would win is really the guy who would win. So Sotek can give his BS, but you know,
it's true.
He might be wrong.
All right, then let's hop into our first matchup.
Round 1.
So this one I was really amused by the pitch. It's Prophet versus Prophet. We've got Tehenhauin, the Prophet of Sotek, versus Wurrzag, the Prophet of Gork, and maybe possibly Mork. And before we get into who would win, just a real quick overview of these characters. You, of course, have Tehenhauin, who is a favorite of mine in particular, the red-crested skink priest of the Lizardmen. He is a ancient and powerful skink that wields some pretty nasty artifacts. He's got the Blade of the Serpent's Tongue, which is a very long curved dagger that grants him all sorts of poisony goodness. And then, of course, he carries around his own personal plaque of Sotek that provides him with a lot of strange defensive powers. He's also a pretty gifted wizard when it comes to the lore of beasts. And as far as feats go, he, of course, is the one who single-handedly laid a massive smackdown on Clan Pestilence years ago and went undefeated for his life until some shenanigans in the end times.
Did he fight with Skrulk ever?
He never fought. Well, he did fight Skrulk eventually in the end times, but
gotcha.
Skrulk was not born for a really long time before Tehenhauin fought the original Nurglich, who's the head of Clan Pestilence.
Which I knew. I was just testing you, and you passed.
Yeah.
So good job.
I'm glad you're keeping me honest here. And then on the other corner, we've got... Oh, and it should be noted, which I will note in the video before this one, that Tehenhauin will be riding, won't be taking a mount into battle. He'll be using his serpent swarms to assist him in the fight. Because wherever he walks, he's always followed by a giant carpet of just really angry sneaky snakes that are just looking for a bite to eat. But on the other side, we've got the Baconator, as some like to call him, Wurrzag, the Prophet of Gork and Mork, who is the most powerful of the greenskin shamans. He is a pretty peculiar individual with a lot of really bizarre items about his person. He, of course, has his squiggly beast, which he keeps in a cage on his back, which is actually a former shaman that he had former shaman or chieftain that he had a big argument with, and he used his magic to turn them into a squiggly beast. And then, of course, he has his baleful mask, which allows him to shoot laser beams out of his eyes, assuming that he's able to gather enough power to himself. And being a big old savage orc, he is a fairly decent combatant. He, of course, has his staff, which is good for juicing up other greenskins. And he specializes in using really high-quality war paint. It's better than all the other orcs' war paint, which gives him some nice defensive capabilities. And he will be coming into this battle on his favorite piggy, Spleen Rippa. So, without any...
Now, is Spleen Rippa just like a big, for those who don't know, of course, like a big pig? Or is he got like any sort of special thing? Or is he literally just like every other pig?
He's just like every other savage orc pig. Spleen Rippa is not particularly special.
Yeah.
If you want a special piggy, you'd have to go check out Gorbad Ironclaw. He has the special pig. Wurrzag's only got the... Wurrzag's pig is literally so not special that to find out its name, you have to like do a deep dive to read. Like if you just look at his tabletop profile, it's not even called Spleen Ripper, it's just like pig. So, Pone, who do you think would win?
Now, we're looking at two magical prophets of thy lords. But
True.
you gotta give it to the person who can call upon the greatest spell in the game, the Foot of Gork. and of course, if you messing with the biggest and the strongest, Gork and Mork, then how can you compete? I gotta give it to Wurrzag, the Great Green Prophet.
Those are actually some super fair points, because a Foot of Gork is kind of a insta-win in a lot of scenarios. I will say, this one is as one would hope, actually a very, very close fight, at least in my opinion from a lore perspective. They're both fairly even when it comes to casting ability. Wurrzag actually has some really nifty anti-magic abilities, and if it weren't for the fact that Tehenhauin is a fairly powerful wizard, Wurrzag would have the option of turning him into a squiggly beast, but the odds of that happening are very, very small. What it comes down to, I think, is that Wurrzag, of course, doesn't wear armor. Tehenhauin is a little bit tougher than Wurrzag. Wurrzag, of course, does have Spleen Ripper to help him out, but as soon as he charges into that carpet of snakes that Tehenhauin keeps around him, that pig is going to go down really fast. And Tehenhauin is very quick. That is one of the few things he has going for him, is he's very used to fighting Skaven. But when it comes to a magic duel between the two, I think it comes down to a critical component, which is that the problem with greenskin magic, with orcs, it's not as important with goblins, but with orcs, is that for orc magic to work right, you have to have like a wah going, or you have to have a couple of delads to juice you up.
Yeah. However, Wurrzag's always dancing, so he's always wah.
Well, not if he's on Spleen Ripper.
He's like doing the wah.
He can't dance on the pig.
Everybody do the wah.
That would be a really gory dance.
Do the wah with me.
It just
chop.
It'd be like a break dance because you're breaking people's spines.
Exactly.
I would say ultimately, I think the thing for me is that I would give the advantage to Tehenhauin and pick him out for two key reasons. One, The poison is a really, really big deal. These two are very equal as far as their stat lines, as you can think of, are concerned. Wurrzag is a little bit tougher than Tehenhauin when it comes to just the way he's built, especially when he's on Spleen Ripper. But Tehenhauin's going to bring a bit more armor to the table, and Tehenhauin does have a lot more skill and speed on his side, being the most melee-oriented of all skinks. And then on top of that, I think ultimately Tehenhauin is the superior wizard only because it's a one-on-one fight. I think if this was a battle between them and a bodyguard unit, I honestly think Wurrzag would be able to take the point when it comes to a magical duel between the two. But ultimately, I think the poison and the magic is going to doom Wurrzag because he's all by his lonesome, which is when greenskin shamans, at least for orcs, are at their weakest. So for that reason, I'm going to give the first round to Tehenhauin.
Well, if you think that you can sleep okay at night knowing Gork and or Mork is pissed at you, then be my guest.
I feel like they're too busy arguing about which is Gork and which is Mork to
Well,
get around to being mad.
I've heard that one's cunningly deadly and one's deadly cunning.
They're cunningly like it's cunningly brutal and brutally cunning.
Oh yeah. Which is the best description for your two gods that I've ever heard.
And it's all just a complete mess.
It's like, well, isn't that the same thing? Oh no, not even.
No, what
do you mean?
It's surprisingly different, but also kind of the same thing.
And that's why green skin culture is hard to top.
Yeah, pretty much. But moving on from those two, we've got our second matchup.
Round 2.
Which is going to be a much more heavy armor, skill-based to the teeth duel, which is Wulfrik the Wanderer versus Queek Headtaker. And a quick description of the two of them to kind of set the stage. We, of course, have Queek Headtaker, the illustrious warlord of Clan Moors, who comes into battle with two primary artifacts. He's got Dwarf Gouger, his legendary dwarf massacring weapon that's basically just a giant spike that also happens to be a maul. And then he wears, of course, his legendary warp-forged armor, which basically the way it works and why it's so gross of an armor is that it has this really light dusting, essentially, of warpstone on top of it, that whenever he gets hit, even if his armor isn't broken, someone just, like, rings, slightly grazes him, it causes a bunch of flecks of warpstone dust to go up in the air, which is poisonous to everybody except the person wearing it, or someone like Thankful who's super addicted to warpstone. And it's pretty deadly. So the longer you fight Queek, the more likely that you're going to basically get immediate cancer and die because of warpstone. But on the other hand, we do have Wulfrik the Wanderer, who actually doesn't bring any magic items to the table. He's just a beast when it comes to fighting. This is a man who has managed to kill he's managed to kill a kraken, he's managed to kill yetis in single combat. He has fought all sorts of crazy beasts and monsters that he just travels around the world fighting. And of course, he specializes with his gift of tongues, which is basically that he's able to perfectly craft an insult that makes you so angry that you just lose yourself in a rage and go all out on him. And he tries to use that to his advantage. Ultimately, though, Wulfrik is much more heavily armored than Queek, and they're very similar in toughness, but Wulfrik's got a little more going for him there. But Queek, of course, is freakishly fast, being a Skaven, especially because he's at his prime at only 4 years old. Skaven, they start so young.
Right. So, I mean, me being the South Park fan that I am, Wulfrik the Wanderer reminds me of the South Park episode where they have the Russell Crowes fighting around the world show. It was on like a Halloween special, or they're all just trying to watch like a commercial that's supposed to air during his show while all this chaos is going on, of course. So like they keep showing his show. It's got like a little theme song that's like making songs and something, something, fighting around the world. And he just like goes around the world just fighting people. And that's Wulfrik the Wanderer.
Yeah, pretty much. That's actually
And
a perfect description of
I,
Wulfrik.
he's like so skilled and everything that I would find it hard for Queek to be able to take him. But in one-on-one combat, I get that he's good, but that's gotta be Queek. That's gotta be Queek's creme de la creme. And he's a giant rat, so I'm gonna say Queek. Everything on my instincts is telling me to say Wulfrik, but that's the trap. It's Queek.
So, honestly, this is one of the ones where, depending on how a very specific situation worked out, I think it would go, it could go either way. Because the thing about both of them is that Queek is a very arrogant, selfish creature who often specializes in fighting things like dwarves and orcs, and he tries to get them overconfident to get them to where they open up a weak point, and then he does his really famous attack where he basically leaps in the air and does like a triple front flip to build up momentum and buries Dwarf Gouger's big ol' spike in their face. But against Wulfrik, that strategy is kind of a problem, because Wulfrik can just like throw a god-given yo mama joke at Queek that's just gonna ruffle his feathers so bad that Queek's gonna just lose it. But on the other hand,
Wulfrik sounds like though one of them guys that's pretty cocky, as he said, nobody can beat me. So I feel like Queek could counter back with the whole get him.
Yeah, he definitely is, and that's kind of the thing, is that if Queek were to get so riled up that he abandoned his tactics or just ran in with his sword and didn't do his infamous attack, I think Wulfrik could beat him. But I don't think Queek would fall for that. This is a Headtaker who, despite being 4 years old, he's been engrossed in combat his entire life. And like the first thing he did coming out of the rat mother that birthed him is he ate all of his siblings.
As one does.
As one does. to be the only child.
They call it McDonald's these days, but it's the same thing.
Oh, I try not to think my chicken nuggets are made out of rats. Thank you. But,
no, just your siblings.
Just your siblings. But so,
and they're delicious.
The biggest thing is that Wulfrik would not be able to one-shot Queek easily, if at all. Queek is very skilled as a duelist. He's used to fighting the likes of Belegar, who is an exceptional duelist. And he, of course, has dealt with all of Skarsnik's schemes and has fought trolls, black orcs, all sorts of just nasty creatures above and below the earth. And the thing is that Queek has a weapon that is specifically engineered to kill Wulfrik. Especially because Wulfrik doesn't wear a freaking helmet. Because Wulfrik's really cocky and thinks that he's basically invincible. He's got a really big thick shield, it's true, but there's nothing magical about any of his equipment. He just is really good at insulting you, and he's really good at fighting, and usually that works out for him. But I think ultimately Dwarf Gouger would doom... I think Wulfrik not having any magic items, because even the Sword of Torgald, which Total War upgraded to being a magic item, isn't traditionally in the lore. It's just a sword that he claimed when he murdered the crap out of the Norscan king, or the Norscan High King, Torgald, for being a jerk. And Wulfrik's just a bastard. But Queek is also a bastard. A rat bastard, you might say. And I think ultimately it's going to come down to, even if Wulfrik was able to insult Queek enough to get him to not use his super finisher move, every time he would strike Queek's armor, which Queek is fully armored head to toe, his face is exposed, but he's more than capable of defending that spot. Every time he hits Queek, a little more of that warpstone dust is going to go up in the air and start choking Wulfrik. It's going to start slowing him down. It's going to be hurting him. And sooner or later, Queek's going to hit him with Dwarf Gouger. And the thing is, if he gets a little bit of momentum behind Dwarf Gouger, it is going to go straight through anything Wulfrik is wearing. Wulfrik's Chaos Armor is not nearly thick enough to stop Dwarf Gouger. He would have to perfectly catch it on his shield every single time. And I just don't think that would happen, especially when Queek has vastly superior speed. But, so for those reasons, I'm going to agree with Professor Pone and go with Queek Headtaker.
Hell yeah.
Round 3.
Now, to go into this third match, this one I feel like is going to be bitched about in the comments a lot. I don't feel like this one's going to have a right answer. But let's go ahead and go into it. We've got the Battle of the Founders, the battle of the greatest men to ever live. We've got Sigmar Heldenhammer.
He doesn't mean Lewis and Clark.
No, not those two. Not the dysentery bros. We've got Sigmar Heldenhammer, the founder of the Empire, versus Gilles le Breton, the founder of Bretonia, aka the Green Knight before he was the Green Knight. To avoid any people Googling. So, the thing about this fight, though, the restriction I'm putting on it so that it's possible to figure out, is that the two of these guys are going to go at it at their primes when they founded their nations but were still mortal. So this would be Gilles le Breton before he gets shot by a goblin bolt thrower and dies. Or is mortally
how
wounded.
lame is that, by the way?
Well, why do you think
Killed by a goblin?
That's literally the reason Bretonians hate shooting so much, is because their founder got shot. It's basically like someone assassinated their president, and they're just really angry at every part of what was involved in that process. But so you have Gilles le Breton when he was leading all of the companions, and he had already supped from the Grail, and he was basically a Grail Knight at max power. And then you have Sigmar Heldenhammer, and this is before Sigmar ascended to godhood. So this is Sigmar after he's unified the Empire. So this is after he's defeated Nagash, after he's defeated the Greenskins at Blackfire Pass, and after he's defeated Morcar the Uniter, aka the first ever chosen. So both of these guys do have some incredible feats. Gilles le Breton did take down a absurd amount of enemies, greenskins, beastmen. He fought some terrible monsters, some dragons, all sorts of crazy things. And both of them became larger than mortal life could contain and ended up evolving into deific-like beings. But this one's pretty difficult to call, so that's why I'm going to pass it to Pone first. And see what he says.
So it's really not difficult in the slightest. Now, you do have the Green Knight, who is uber cool. Of course, this is before he's the Green Knight. Uber cool knight guy. However, you don't ever hear anybody mention the words like, "Oh, praise Green Knight." No. They always say praise Sigmar. That's because he had to have been the bigger badass. And he killed Nagash, who's like the most OP guy to ever exist.
I will note, he kind of cheated.
It's got to be
Sigmar.
No. It's Sigmar.
That was.
That's why it's not cheating. It's tactics.
It was like slapstick humor.
Praise Sigmar.
It was literally Nagash going, like, having an ooh shiny moment and bending down to pick up his crown, and Sigmar hit him in the face.
I mean, Sigmar was like such a badass that they like worshipped him before he was a god. That's why it's got to be Sigmar.
That's fair. All right, so when it comes to the lore, this is actually a very difficult matchup because we don't know a ton about Gilles and a lot of his feats. Like, we know what he did, but almost all of the stories about him are basically legends that have been passed down through bards and stories and stuff like that. They're not like first person or super factual accounts. Whereas with Sigmar, we have really, really detailed history about most of his feats. That being said, when comparing the two of them and all the things they were able to accomplish, they were both mortal. They were both able to be killed at a point in their lives, which is when they're fighting. So none of that, if Gilles managed to stab or decapitate Sigmar, or Sigmar managed to cave his chest in, whoever it is going to die. So at that point, it comes down to, I think, skill and speed versus just power. Because Gilles, after he drank from the Grail, was functionally a Grail Knight. He was still a human, sort of, but he was very, very fast, and he had very unearthly, almost elven levels of dexterity.
Kind of like an Achilles.
Yeah, kind of like that. Except for his heel was a goblin shooting a bolt thrower at him instead of some dude with
it happens.
Some dude with a bow.
Yeah, see, it's those damn arrows.
He had the Achilles chest instead of the Achilles tendon.
Yeah, he should have went for the tendon.
Yeah, should have went for the tendon. But and Gilles would be riding into battle on his horse, whereas Sigmar would be in his more traditional fighting style, which would be on foot. But I think at the end of the day, the thing is that Gilles doesn't have a lot of really super famous artifacts tied to his name. You know, he became a Grail Knight, which made him more than human. But Sigmar also was more than human. And Galmaraz is freaking ridiculous. There are accounts of when Sigmar fought Morcar the Uniter especially, where Sigmar was swinging so hard that he was able to launch an Everchosen in full chaos armor through like multiple trees with a single swing. And Morcar just got the tar beaten out of him. So I think at the end of the day, Gilles suffers from the fact that he was killed by just bad luck and a cowardly act. But ultimately, I think if he went toe-to-toe with Sigmar, I do think he would be able to score first blood against Sigmar, and I do think he would be able to deeply and horribly scar and wound Sigmar. But one hit from Galmaraz would either severely disable or just outright kill Gilles Le Breton in a single hit. And Sigmar's gonna get at least one hit in. Like, he is a skilled enough combatant to go toe-to-toe with some of the like most powerful individuals the world had ever seen by that point, and was able to come out on top. So I'm gonna also have to go with Sigmar Heldenhammer.
Hell yeah.
And becoming a god after you die is a little bit more impressive than just becoming like a spooky avatar of your god.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest though, he's definitely cooler. The Green Knight's cooler than whatever Sigmar became. But also, he didn't make it into the age of Sigmar, whereas Sigmar...
Oh, boo! How dare you insult my boy Gilles like that? He lives on in our hearts.
I shall taunt you a second time.
That is a perfect segue into the fourth matchup for today. So, and keeping in the spirit with what I hope to continue doing the Who Would Wins going forward.
Round 4.
Our fourth matchup is a little bit of more of an unconventional fight, which is going to be the Peasants of Bretonia, and I mean not the men-at-arms, the peasants, versus Skaven slaves. So like 100 on each team going at it. Who would win?
I'm gonna say Skaven slaves, because look, here's a big one. The Skaven are so mysterious, right? Like, you know, a Bretonian peasant wouldn't know what a Skaven is, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you see a giant fucking rat just staring you down, you're gonna be more afraid than that rat is of you, that's for sure. And I think that Skaven are just more vicious than some guy with poop smeared on him.
Yeah, I would say that's a very fair assessment, actually. Bretonian peasants, they have a very unique form of bravado, which is that a knight is standing over them, and if they run, they'll get stabbed. Or they'll lose their house or something.
Ah, the old Soviet Russia tactic.
Skaven have a much more unique way of running away, which is that when Skaven slaves decide to panic and run, they actually don't, because the problem with Skaven slaves is they kind of suffer from this problem where all of the guys behind them keep pushing forwards, to the extent that the guys in front will turn and start attacking everyone around them in a desperate frenzy, which basically results in the unit exploding as everyone kills each other. But I think this would result in the peasants being wiped out much quicker than the Skaven slaves. So although technically I could easily see it resulting in what you could theoretically call a tie, I think the peasants would definitely die first.
that like description is like why Skaven. The fact that all their stuff like blows up on them and backfires and everything like fails. That's why they're like my favorite with the orcs being like the close behind, like culture wise and lore wise and everything.
The orcs have the same. They were the only two factions in the game that had unique misfire charts. It wasn't, most factions are like, oh, the war machine was destroyed, or oh, we can't shoot for 2 turns or whatever. No, for goblins, it was like the Doom Diver spins around in a random direction and punts the Doom Diver goblin into the ground, so he just skid marks into the nearest green skin unit and kills all of them. And for Skaven, it's like the warp lightning cannon detonates and turns into like a small nuclear reactor and just wipes out the back line.
But the beauty is that there's so many that it's just like, oh, what the hell? Keep going. Or the famous line from Spaceballs, keep firing, assholes.
That's exactly what it is. I genuinely think a Skaven war machine line versus a Goblin war machine line is the most amazing matchup in Warhammer history, because they're equally as likely to destroy themselves as they are to destroy the enemy team. Truly a match made in heaven. Especially if you get in like the super weird weapons, like you get like the weapon teams for the Skaven, where you get like the rattling guns that can jam, or they like fire it too fast, so the guy in front loses control and starts like spinning wildly, shooting in every direction. Or you get the Night Goblin squig. Oh gosh, what's it called? Squig globa, which is a giant squig that they grease a bunch of smaller squigs and stuff it in its mouth to spit at the enemy. But if the squig swallows the little squigs, its stomach acid will ignite the stuff they're covered in, so it just blows up and kills everybody around it.
Oh, man. Now that's creativity at its finest.
That's why fighting each other would be like, if you were zoomed too far out, it would be impossible to tell who was causing what damage.
So, do Greenskins and Skaven have a whole lot of big combats?
Oh yeah, all the time, especially Night Goblins and Skaven. Which Night Goblins are also the biggest into most of the war machines. So yes, they fight frequently, and it's usually a massive horde of squigs and bizarre war machines versus a massive army of Skaven and bizarre war machines, and it goes really bad for both sides.
Needless to say, peasants would just get butchered.
Yeah, I honestly do not think there is a single. I can think of maybe a handful of units that would lose to peasants in a fair fight, and that would only be because the peasants had equal numbers to them and they were like snotlings. But that'll wrap up our 4th match. So for today's final battle,
round 5,
we've got Belegar Ironhammer, the true king of Carrick Peaks, versus Tyrion, the defender of Lothern, and what's a polite? I'm trying to think of a polite way to say lover, but the Everqueen's chosen guardian, so we'll call it. So for these two, this is really a battle of both have incredible skill at combat. But Belegar relies on flawless defense with a shield that can protect him from literally anything, and a hammer that allows him to strike so fast you can't even see it, against Tyrion, who of course has natural elven agility, which allows him to keep up with that. But in addition, he has the armor of Venarian, which provides him with much more defense than you would expect on an elf. He, of course, has the Sunblade, which is a big old nasty sword that can unleash dragon fire once in a while. And then, of course, he has the Heart of Avalorn, which is that if he is mortally wounded, it will explode, but it will give him a chance to revive and finish off his opponent. And Tyrion will be riding into battle on his legendary horse Malhinder, who is, of course, the largest and fastest horse we've ever seen in Warhammer Fantasy. But Belegar is going to be coming in on his Oath Stone, so he's going to be throwing down a rock and planting his feet. But this is a classic and perfect matchup of dwarf versus elf, or Dawi versus Asur. So the question is,
elf master race.
Elf master race. You're gonna go with Tyrion, are you?
I'm not even gonna second think it.
Oh man.
He's gonna zip all around. He's gonna be poking everywhere. Belegar's gonna be like, "Oh, get behind my shield!" But he's already been hit from the back. He's dead.
Okay, so this one is
also elves are cooler than dwarves.
Oh, the rudeness.
my elf waifus.
I'm gonna get so many dislikes on this video just because you said that.
Elf waifus greater than dwarf beards.
I feel like you're trying to twist this argument into an argument people aren't going to argue with.
Well, Tyrion's like Alpha Chad. Belegar's like, he competes with a goblin. Get the hell out of here.
Listen, if he could just get Scarsnick and Hammer's reach. So, when it comes down to this matchup, this is actually a super interesting fight because they're both fairly matched when it comes to speed. Just because Belegar has the Hammer of Angrund, which actually allows him to keep up with the likes of Tyrion. Tyrion is still faster than him, but he's not so much faster that it's impossible for Belegar to keep up. And then it really comes down to I think what it ultimately boils down to is, can Sunfang, Tyrion's legendary sword, get past Belegar's skill and the Shield of Defiance? Because that is the only way to take Belegar down. If Sunfang is going up against the Shield of Defiance, it does not stand two chances in hell. That shield will easily repel that blade. But Tyrion does have mobility advantage, and of course he does have a speed advantage, and debatably, I would say skill is also on his side. But Belegar is
and reach.
Yeah, I guess technically.
You can't tell me that reach isn't important in combat.
It is important, but dwarves are very accustomed to dealing with that particular issue. But
yeah, they shouldn't be though.
This fight is very, very difficult to call, because Sunfang is very, very strong, and Malhinder can put a lot of extra weight behind it, but Tyrion's not going to be able to hurt Belegar by coming in on a charge. He's going to have to ride in and start throwing as many attacks as he can at Belegar, because if he just charges, Belegar can easily get the Shield of Defiance up in time and it's not going to do anything. So you have this situation where Tyrion's going to have to sacrifice his mobility advantage if he wants to even hurt Belegar, which kind of puts them on a slightly even footing, though Tyrion does have a notable reach advantage. Though I do feel very strongly that Malhinder would probably die very, very quickly, or at least be injured to the point that Tyrion would have to fight on foot. So at that point, it's difficult to say. Sunfang would be the Dragon Breath would be useless against Belegar. That's not going to hurt him. In his Gromrel plate and the Shield of Defiance, it might singe his beard a little bit and really, really piss him off. So it really comes down to, then, in my opinion, can Belegar finish off Tyrion by using the Wrath of the Ancestors? And to that I would also say no, because if Belegar did unleash the Wrath of the Ancestors, I do believe he could strike a mortal blow on Tyrion. But even if he did that, Tyrion has that lovely Heart of Avalorn, which is going to bring him back, or at least sustain him. So you end up in this situation where it practically becomes a coin toss. Because on one hand, if Tyrion can get lucky and slide behind the Shield of Defiance in order to lick Sunfang through Belegar's arm, or just rip the shield out of his grasp, or just plant his blade in Belegar's face, then Belegar dies. On the other hand, if Belegar gets lucky and is able to connect the Hammer of Angren with Tyrion's face, or is able to crush one of Tyrion's hands, yada yada, then Tyrion loses. And Belegar does have a lot more endurance, but Tyrion has a lot more speed and slightly more skill. So this one is one of the ones where I feel very, very strongly is a 50-50. It just depends on how you visualize the fight going in your head, how you visualize certain advantages working out. You know,
sure, it's not like a 51-49.
Well, I guess we'll have to push it there. And the thing that I think is that both of them have years of experience fighting dangerous foes. They both have hundreds of years of experience, because Tyrion and Belegar are actually very close to the same age. Because Tyrion's very young for an elf, and Belegar is kind of old for a dwarf. If anything, Belegar might be older than Tyrion, but not by much. Actually, no.
And
Tyrion,
who kills each of them?
Who kills each of them? Well,
yeah, like how does Tyrion die? Versus
Tyrion got shot in the chest by an arrow and died from a Lithanar, and Belegar was starved to death over the course of about 2 years, and was poisoned. He got poisoned by a poison weapon, and then a few months later he died to Queek in single combat, but still managed to injure Queek deeply, which led to Queek's death. So for this one, I think that
only an elf can kill an elf. I agree.
Only an elf can kill an elf. More like Games Workshop was like, what do we do with all these elves? And it's like, just put them in a blender. they'll work themselves out. I think ultimately, for the feats both of them exhibit, I think just because Belegar has the Hammer of Angren, which allows him to keep up with Elven speeds, I would give the fight to Belegar. Only because normally Dwarven tenacity, armor, and strength is a equal match for Elven dexterity, speed, and magical abilities. But usually there's some little thing that comes in there to decide the fight. But Belegar is able to negate one of the elves' most important advantages, which is freakish speed, because he has a hammer that's literally designed to do that. And it's why he was able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Queek Headtaker and other Skaven assassins and all sorts of other crazy insanity. And he also has a shield that's so strong it can easily take a hit from a giant, and he doesn't even budge. So I think Belegar's magic items negate Tyrion's advantages, which leaves Belegar purely with his advantages, which Tyrion's items do not allow him to overcome. Sure, he has the armor of Anarion. It's good, but it's not perfect, and Tyrion also doesn't carry a shield. He only wields his sword in one hand and usually uses his other hand to control his horse. And then you have the Heart of Avalorn, which is going to protect Tyrion from essentially a insta-kill kind of attack, but Belegar literally has one of those with the Wrath of the Ancestors, where if he unleashed everything he had, I feel very confident he would take Tyrion down. Which even then, the Heart of Avalorn isn't a guarantee resurrection. It's a fairly unstable form of life magic.
Kind of like if you have like maybe 10% life left, it might proc.
Something like that. I think of it more as a what do you call those? A defibrillator, where it's
Claire.
Yeah, it's not guaranteed to keep you in the fight. Or, it's like Blood Bowl when you get a dead injury and you apothecary and you somehow get 2 deads, which is bullshit. But seems to happen all the time. So yeah, I'm gonna give it to Belegar. So that's gonna wrap up our matches for today. I would love to see.
Okay, so you've called the match. It's over. But I just felt like you forgot one thing. It's that the elves managed to take off some dwarf beards. The dwarfs never managed to put beards on the elves. That's all I'm saying. All right, carry on. Just something we're past it.
They just find elven corpses with beards taped on their faces.
What have they done to our handsome faces?
It's just like dwarven super glue. It doesn't come off. It's so itchy.
Dwarven engineering.
But with that, we're about 45 minutes, so it's definitely time to pretty much call it. I want to once again thank Professor Pone so much for coming by and being today's guest. It was a blast having you, good sir, and I hope to have you back sometime. And if you haven't already, please be sure to go by Professor Pone's YouTube channel and subscribe and check it out whenever he live streams. I am always lurking in there because if you couldn't tell from this video, Professor Pone is kind of fucking hilarious. And when he's playing Death by Daylight, it is legitimately one of the most entertaining streams I ever watch.
It's some fun stuff.
Like his panic in that game is something amazing to behold.
And it's all warranted.
Yes, it is.
Because there's somebody trying to kill me.
So, with that, we're good to wrap up. Thank you all so much for watching. If you would like to try and guess, or let us know how you did down in the comments below, predicting who I picked to win using my lore knowledge, or trying to predict who Pone won.
Who actually won.
Inscrutable knowledge, because he is truly ancient
Yes.
beyond measure.
Yes.
And then, of course, leave down in the comment section below or on my Discord channel, which you can find a link for in the description, who you would like to see in the next Who Would Win. And be sure to like the posts of the ones that you really want to see, because I always will look at the ones that have the most upvotes and will usually pick those unless it's like really bad. So
very one-sided.
yeah. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next time.